If you've been on the channel before, man, you know we talk about 2K a lot on here. I've talked about a lot of 2Ks before. Somebody in my comments suggested that I should talk about all the 2Ks. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll go through from 2K14, which was the first one on PS4, all the way up until now. 2K14. 2K14 was a stepping stone to everything that we have nowadays. It was the first game on a PS4. It was the biggest graphical jump we've ever seen in a sports game ever. It was also the first 2K that had a park. It didn't really have like a rep system, but you went in there, played basketball. That's the best way to explain it. Like, there wasn't really much of an objective other than just to play games. This also had a really good My Career. It had the Jackson Ellis storyline. You went in rival, you went at it. You went through the whole rookie showcase and stuff like that. The only problem with My Career was that not everybody had voice lines and not everybody had like voices in the game. So sometimes you would have to read the script other than like them saying it out loud. Other than that though, this is still looked at one of the best 2Ks ever. Definitely one of the best graphical 2Ks ever. The lighting in there was phenomenal. The NBA at this point was at a really good spot. The gameplay was really smooth. All the animations were really clean, very realistic. The game just felt really polished on both ends of the ball. It was really good playing defense, and on offensive end, you had to get really creative to get to the rim, but the game definitely rewarded you for being creative around the rim. Overall, I give this 2K a 9 out of 10. NBA 2K15. Now, NBA 2K15 was following 2K14, obviously. It was the second one on the PS4. And this game, off the rip, had a very, very big, drastic graphical drop-off. I don't know what happened between those two games, but somehow the graphics just got a lot worse. When we look at the gameplay, the biggest thing that sticks out is the dribbling. The dribbling in this game was some of the best from the dribble head standpoint. The dribbling was really fluid and fast. The contest system this year was absolutely god awful. Couldn't get no type of contest. It didn't matter if you was in somebody's face. If they greened it was going in. And speaking of greening, this was the first 2K that actually introduced the shot meter. Something that was very prevalent until about 2K20, and then people started using no meter. This was also the first game with affiliations, something that people have been begging back. That was only in the game for 3 years up until 2K17. People want affiliations back. To this date, they haven't gave us affiliations back the way that we want it. We don't want it to be in the city. We want each park to be its own individual server, and each park that you go to, you get like an attribute upgrade for going to that park. Maybe it'd be shooting for Sunset or dribbling for Rivet. It's also introduced the rookie to legend rep system, where you had to start at a rookie, and the more games you played and the better rep percentage you had, you went up to legend. I think the legend reward this year was a mascot, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it was a mascot along with some VC as well. This game implemented a lot of the new rep rewards that we have nowadays. Also, something very, very specific to this game was the Jordan Rec Center. This was the only game that had a Jordan Rec Center where you actually had to hop on the spot. So if you were waiting for a game, you were waiting potentially 4 or 5 minute quarters. You really just hopped on a spot, whether it was with your squad or randoms, and you wore your actual park street clothes. The one thing that really holds this game back, and I know it was at the end of the year, but it's still a part of the game, was the 7-3 demigods. The demigods, literally, it was a glitch. I'm sorry, 7-2, but it was a glitch where you could have a 7-2 big center and you could have guard abilities. You could pull up from anywhere, dribble from anywhere, have max shooting, max finishing. It didn't really matter what you did on the defensive end. You couldn't stop it. And that right there really, really holds this game back. So I'm gonna have to give this game a 7 out of 10.
I gotta hold down the city.
NBA 2K16. Now, I've talked about NBA 2K16 a whole lot of times. This is my personal favorite 2K of all time. It's expanding on the affiliations that we had in the last year, and it gave us brand new parks, something that never happened with affiliations because it didn't happen in the 17. It expanded on the old rookie to legend rep system, except for now you had to hit 5 of the rep to get to the next level. So that meant that Legend 5 was the highest rank you could get this year, and I believe it was either mascots or tigers. I can't remember which one it was that you got, but I think it was either mascot or tigers that you got at Legend 5. You also had things like taking your shirt off for Legend 1. As far as the gameplay goes, this gameplay, whether you were a sim guy, whether you were a park guy, whether you're a really comp dude, you're a dribble head, it had it for everybody. Everybody liked this game. The gameplay was fire. The only thing that really diminished the gameplay was the constant ankle breakers and being able to miss greens sometimes. But really, this game overall was a really polished game. On both ends of the floor, you could play great. Even on a defensive end, you could play defense really well. It's really polished. You can move your feet well. If you had good timing, you would get a lot of blocks. The story in this game mode, people have mixed opinions on it, but I like the story in this game mode. Vic Van Leer, rest in peace to him. He was your best friend. You had the whole story where you were going through, you know, high school and college and all that stuff, and you were dealing with your girlfriend, you know, your sister and stuff like that. They were bickering, and you had your agent. And this was actually written by Spike Lee. I think this is why it was so good, but he put together an absolute masterclass as far as it goes on the story. Also, the build system, it gave you a lot of freedom. You were only allowed to be either outside or inside or balanced, but once you got in there, you could customize your caps however you wanted to. Made for a lot of variations of different builds. A lot of people went with a 6-7 point guard. That was a really good build that year. Also, the state of the NBA was at its absolute peak. This was when Curry and the Warriors had a 7-3-9 run, and then LeBron came back and had the 3-1 comeback and stuff like that. So the NBA was popping at this time. The game was great. So for that reason, this game gets a 10 out of 10.
Good times, good times.
NBA 2K17 now. If you want my full thoughts on NBA 2K17, you can go to my last video. I made a whole video dedicated to NBA 2K17. Did the same thing with 16 as well. Anyway, NBA 2K17, in my opinion, is one of the most overrated 2Ks of all time. I'm not saying that it's a bad game, but I just don't think it's the best. First and foremost, the gameplay. It was extremely easy to get your ankles took. The Hall of Fame brick wall screens were just super duper OP. There's nothing you could do about it. Like, it literally would lay you out every single time. The sharpshooters were OP, the locks were OP, the playmakers were OP, everything, every build was OP. And it made it fun. I'm not gonna say that the game wasn't fun, but I'm just saying that I don't think the game was the best of all time, if you know what I'm saying. This was also the introduction to the archetype system. You were either a slasher or a sharpshooter, whatever you were. That was it. There was no mixing the two together. There was no double archetypes or nothing like that. So once you picked one, that's what you were. You got 5 Hall of Fame badges for whatever that build was. So if you're a playmaker, you probably have like ankle breaker, dimer, and stuff like that. It was also the only game that had grand badges. Kind of like Takeover, how Takeover is now, but the grand badge might have been a little bit more overpowered. I'm not gonna lie. Once you got your grand badge, it was over with. Especially if somebody was on a playmaker. Oh yeah, you're on the floor every single time. Every single time. This game also had the same exact parks from 16. The only thing they did was make it night. That's literally all they did. The one thing this game did have that was superior to almost any other 2K was the dribbling. The dribbling this year, and I ain't gonna lie, the dribbling was fire this year. Literally, if you made a dribbling mixtape, you would get automatically like 500k views. Like, that was the easiest way to blow it back in the day. And it brings in my career. My career story was, it was a pretty good story. You went to college, then you played the overseas, what's it called? You played the Olympics. You played the Olympics, you got a call from Coach K. He told you, yo, come play in the Olympics. You had a little girlfriend, whatever. And then you had the thing with orange juice and stuff like that in Denver as well. Basically, the thing with orange juice was when y'all both started eating, or when you started eating, you were able to control both of them at the same time. I almost forgot the worst thing in this game, the Paul George loading screen. Lord have mercy that people hate the Paul George loading screen. You would sit there for 20 minutes at a time just waiting to even get into the game. And speaking of server problems, Park After Dark, the worst event in 2K history. I talked about that in my last video. So considering all those things, man, I'm gonna have to give 2K17 an 8 out of 10. That brings us to NBA 2K18. NBA 2K18, for the longest time, people looked at that as the worst 2K of all time. A lot of people still look at it as the worst 2K of all time. I think it's a different 2K. I'm gonna wait to say later what 2K I think it is. NBA 2K18, that was the introduction to the neighborhood. People were complaining in 2K17 that they had the same parks, and they wanted new parks so bad, which rightfully so. 2K added a neighborhood, which basically was a free roam world where you had to start an AI statue and then you walked all the way around to the park. Anyway, it took mad long to get to the park. Overall, it just wasn't the best idea. The courts were really, really gray. I'm not gonna say that there were server issues because the servers weren't really that bad that year, but it was mainly about the gameplay. The gameplay was heavily infested with blow-bys and snatchbacks, and that was really one of the only things holding this game back. That and the missed layups. The missed layups were really, really bad this year. And don't even get me started on the My Career story. The My Career story was god awful. This was the introduction of the most hated character ever. Be Fresh. She had Be Fresh every 2 seconds. She was in your crib. She wanted something. There was some type of ad going on. Reese's Puffs. She was asking if you met Kobe yet. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on. The story was stupid in itself because you started as a DJ and you just hooped like outside, and somehow an NBA scout was there and you got to go to the team that you wanted to go to the whole time. It made no sense at all. And literally the whole story was done through the phone. And the worst part was you could not skip the cutscenes whatsoever. It didn't matter how long the cutscene was. It didn't matter how many players you made. You couldn't skip the cutscenes. And the build system this year, it was literally just a double archetype system where it took the system from last year and it just made it so you can make 2 archetypes now, mix them together. The build system wasn't that bad. It really wasn't that bad at all. It was really about the gameplay. The core gameplay was really flawed. The dribbling wasn't the best that year either. So all those reasons combined, I'm gonna have to give this game a 6 out of 10.
I was the man then. I put some ice on my wrist, and while I pop out is dancing.
NBA 2K19. Now, NBA 2K19, this was the year of the stretches. This was the year of the lockdowns, 6'10" lockdowns. This game was absolutely insane when you look at the dribbling, the way the contest system was. But it was a fun game. It was a fun game still. Like I said before, the dribbling in this game was absolutely insane. You could pull off all types of combos and spin backs, and it was just really fun. This was the birth of the stretch bigs. Now, there were stretch bigs before, but they weren't like this year. This year, you could not get a contest at all. When you throw on the base 11 jump shot, it would just overpower, bro, because you jumped so high that they couldn't get a contest. They couldn't jump as high as you. And this game has my candidate for the most underrated story in 2K history. The story in this game was super dope, bro. Like, it was very in depth. You had to go overseas, man. You had to come to the G League. It was a whole bunch of stuff going on. I was a really, really big fan of this story mode, man. And I really think it's slept on. I'm not even a big My Career guy, but I love that story. The rep system this year was basically just based off of your overall. So it was a road to 99, which was god awful. I don't care what nobody tells you. Road to 99 was terrible. The road to 99 basically was when you hit 85 overall, from then on till 99, you got different rewards. So like you might have got to take your shirt off, or you might get a mascot, something like that. It just made it so it was very flawed. So when you made a new build, you didn't have any of the rewards that you earned, which made zero sense at all. The same thing with the clothes. Like, once you bought clothes on one build, you couldn't use them on another build. This was still a fire game though, and I really enjoyed this game. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and give this game an 8 out of 10. That brings us to NBA 2K20, man. NBA 2K20, man, I say it all the time, it's the most controversial 2K. It is so split down the middle how people feel about this game. I thought the game was phenomenal. People would like to say that, oh, it was only good because of quarantine, but I like the game from the time that, like, 2 months after it dropped, because when it dropped, it was garbage. I give you that. But like 2 months after it dropped to the game ended, I loved the game. I just felt like the build system was very diverse. You could use a lot of different builds and still be good. The shooting, I think, was perfect in the sense that not too many whites went in, and at the same time, like, it rewarded you for greening your shots. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, like, if you had like a 65 3 ball, you could still be consistent, but you had to really know your jumper. The defense was some of the best it's ever been on the perimeter and the interior. You could play really good defense this year. This is one of the last 2Ks where it had really, really good defense. This might be the best defensive 2K that I've ever seen. The dribbling wasn't too good this year. I'll give it to you. The dribbling wasn't that good, but you still had some moves like the quick stop, and before they passed it, you had the explosive behind the back. Now, one thing about this game was it had the same exact parts from 2K19, so that rubbed people the wrong way. As soon as the game dropped, then you had the whole thing where Ronnie said it wasn't a neighborhood. I didn't really keep up with the story this year, I'm not gonna lie. I don't even remember what the story was because I really didn't even play it. This is when I started playing Park primarily. My team was super fire this year, though. I will give it that. My team was fire, and of course, the pandemic does contribute to the game being good. I mean, let's be honest, at the end of the day, we had all the time in the world to play it. So overall, I'm gonna give this game a 9 out of 10. I might ruffle some feathers there, but I think 2K20 was a 9 out of 10. If I hurt your feelings, I'm sorry, I don't apologize. That brings us to NBA 2K21. I'm gonna do next gen current, but I'm gonna make it quick. Current gen, worst 2K of all time in my opinion. It had speed glitching. It had the whites that went in insane amount. Actually, it rewarded you for shooting worse because it had flexible release, or made it so that if you shot a late, you were better off shooting a late than a slightly early. And then I forget the Zins with the shot aiming. It was literally an auto green. There's nothing you could do about it. The defense was super duper slidey. The builds were not that diverse. The only builds that you could really use in there was to play sharp. Then we go on to NBA 2K21 next gen. This game was not that great either. It started off with Rookieville. You had the city that was very spaced out and only let you hold 100 people in the city. The defense in the game was garbage. Everybody made a 6'7" power forward. The interior defense, like, you couldn't do nothing. The dunking was so overpowered this year, like, it just ruined the rest of the game for everybody. So I'm gonna have to give 2 ratings on this one. For 2K21 current gen, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 10. The worst rating you'll see today. 2K21 next gen, on the other hand, probably like a 6 out of 10. NBA 2K22 and 23, I'm gonna only do next gen because that's the only ones I played. I didn't play current gen. 2K22, I really like this 2K actually. I thought it was one of the best 2Ks that have dropped in a recent period. I think it's the best 2K on the next gen console, confidently I can say that. The gameplay was just really fast paced. You can play defense on the perimeter and the interior. Remember, the steals were super duper OP. Me and my homies, man, we had some times on there. We had like 3 lockdowns. We used to go stupid in the park. The shooting was a little bit too easy. The whites dropped at an extreme rate, especially once people got their badges and they got Hall of Fame sniper. There's not really much you could do about it. Also, at the beginning of the year, they had the walkbacks, which is super duper OP. But they did have the glitch builds this year, which a lot of people hated it, but I thought it was kind of good for the game. It lets you do a little different things with the builds, and it made it a little bit more fun having the glitch builds, and you can do a lot more. But like maybe like if you had a 6'10", but you had like the 6'9" stats, and you could get 6'9" dribble moves. My career story, I don't really remember it because I didn't play it like that. I know you can go to the G League or you can go to college. Yeah, the main thing in this game was just mainly the whites dropping And that really hurt the game, but it also gave the lesser skilled players a chance to compete, which you can debate if that's good or not. I don't know. Like, I want to appeal to the casuals a little bit, but not at that rate. Like, it was just too much the whites going in. So with that being said, I'm gonna have to give 2K22 a 7 out of 10. And that brings us to the current day. That brings us to NBA 2K23. NBA 2K23, I'm not a fan of at all. I really don't like the pace of the game. I don't like the adrenaline. I just don't think it lets you have your freedom that you used to have. The build system isn't that diverse. Like, everybody just makes a 6'9". I mean, sure, there's a lot of other builds you can use, but a 6'9" is easily far and ahead the best build in the game. Also, the badge system is really weird, like with the tier system. I just don't think it really makes sense the way they did the badge system this year. I think it should take that out of the game. The interior defense is absolutely garbage this year. Yeah, just overall, I'm not the biggest fan of this 2K. I'm gonna have to give this 2K a 6 out of 10 rating. Let me know if y'all think that's too high or too low, and let me know if y'all disagree with any of the ratings that I did in this video, man. Make sure y'all hit the subscribe button, man. Join the family, man. We'll catch y'all next time, man. Peace.